Welcome to the Novice to Office podcast. I am your host, Trey Bahm. It's been a year. If everything goes according to plan, I will house my papers and memoirs in the Mason County Public Library. At that time, you can read a detailed account of the past year and come to an understanding about my absence. I don't think Wheaton will have me their library. They kind of got burned with the last political paper depository they set up. Anyway, welcome to the second inaugural. In more ways than one, we are rebooting. We're going to do something a little different. I know that in my first inauguration, way back in episode 1, I made a promise that I would be fair and that we wouldn't stoop to discussions rooted in current events and simple opinions and commentary. Well, we're going to start talking about current events and some opinions. Now, this won't be a today's news, okay? We're still going to maintain our focus on the why and how we have what we have today in government and politics in America. So it won't be this noisy coverage, which, for instance, dominates the reporting of a presidential election. But we're going to talk about what's going on. I mean, it wouldn't be a legit political podcast if we didn't bend a promise or two. So here goes. And what more appropriate way to reboot our format than with the upcoming second inauguration of the first non-consecutive president we've had in almost 130 years? Today, we get to discuss the return of President Trump. Who doesn't like talking about President Trump? The key thing no one really observed about the election last year was that in terms of votes cast, the totals and the electoral college result that we saw were really what we would have seen in 2020 without COVID. In other words, election 2024 was really just a delayed 2020. Conspiracy theories aside, and I've seen no evidence that 2020 was stolen by anyone. There's no credibility to any of those claims. But conspiracies aside, it is true that basic vote by mail programs around the country did have an impact in 2020. They just did. And this is why, for instance, so much of the pro-Trump sentiment out there you saw evolve from they manipulated to they set up COVID intentionally so they could do vote by mail. Well, whatever about that. It is true that vote by mail did have an impact. And the state where this was the most obvious was ironically in California. 4 years ago, Joe Biden's total was in California was 2 million more than Kamala Harris's was this past November. And the same number of people in 2020 voted the same number of people that voted in 2020 for Donald Trump voted again for him last November. Almost the exact same number to the 1,000th place. But 2 million people voted, 2 million people fewer voted for Kamala Harris than did Joe Biden. And that's ironic given the fact that Vice President Harris was originally from that state, of course. And that's an example of the get out the vote by ballot, the convenience that caused. California requires that, or they automatically send out a vote like that. And 3 million people total fewer voted last November than they did in 2020. And 2 million of that, again, was just in California. So COVID got some high blue state totals and made a difference in places like Michigan and Wisconsin, which Trump, of course, carried in 2016. At the same time, those COVID programs drove up participation. And then last year, both campaigns harvested that data and for their own purposes. And the Trump campaign did this the best, especially in Michigan and Pennsylvania and Georgia. Independent voters were found, and Trump actually flipped them. He also did that in Arizona, but there the turnout was more static. But the Trump team did it. And of course, Trump was also wildly successful in outreach to younger male voters by participating in the podcasts that they mainly listen to. He lost the underage 29 demo by between 5 and 9%, depending on what numbers you look at. And because fewer people voted all, that means it was mainly boys, or the girls stayed home, or a combination. Meanwhile, the Democrats utterly destroyed themselves. Never in my lifetime have I seen any political organization more tone deaf. And as ugly as all the lawsuits and the prosecutions were, the Democrats played right into the hands of the one politician in America who fully understood that there is no such thing as bad publicity. And then when Harris replaced Biden at midnight, as it were, all those independents who I told you about were now involved. Suddenly, the secret they were suddenly doing what they wanted, and so it became true, and all the independents broke Trump's way. Um, so in this sense, 2024 was a 4 year delay. Um, and in that sense, if you look at it in terms of just kind of a 4 year interrupted delay, the second inauguration of Donald Trump, his second term, is really just kind of about the status quo. With the exception of federal immigration policy and probably some details about foreign policy, but even in immigration policy, there are exceptions to the exceptions. Very little is going to change in terms of the impact on the everyday lives of Americans. Why does this matter? Well, two reasons. One, my liberal friends' fears that the U.S. is going to become a whites only anti trans theocracy is just not going to happen. Um, it'll be as it was before. Americans will keep being Americans, which means they're going to continue to have this expectation that this government resource is going to continue to be there for them. Two, the headwaters of government, both federal and state and much local, which is federal borrowing, federal credit, will continue to gush forth into the economy. It's just going to come maybe through different streams. Trump himself has already called for getting rid of the debt ceiling. I mean, he's a true real estate developer. All he needs is an unrestricted line of credit. If we pretend that we're his banker, that's what he's saying to us. And there's not going to be a return of fiscal restraint. Just this week, Speaker Johnson said that old age entitlements would be preserved, according to Trump's campaign positions. And it's true that GOP Congress will try to reduce the deficit, but I mean, it's at $1 trillion plus. Anyone can reduce that. All you have to do is not fund Biden's climate pork, and you can knock off 10%. But it reminds me of a famous quote by old Senator Everett Dirksen, who was an Illinois Republican. A billion here and a billion there, and pretty soon you're talking about real money. So, not much is going to change. But federal spending matters because it can't be done without borrowing. And those borrowers, who are bondholders, have to be paid back. And that's why a solid 20% of all the tax dollars Washington takes in every year goes solely to the debt service. That federal spending is taking up more and more of this every year. So it matters because one day the bill is going to become due. And many expect that day to be in about 10 years. So again, as far as impacts on everyday Americans right now, the continued inflation caused by the Biden-Harris administration's war on oil and gas will be replaced by higher prices for certain goods due to the international tariffs that are proposed. So that's not going to change. And they can dial back some of that climate change spending, but it's not going to really do much in terms of eliminating the deficit. Also, because they want to eliminate taxes on gratuity workers, which is about 150, $200 billion annually. And I haven't seen anywhere that would include FICA payments. So I don't see how that's really going to impact everyday Americans that much. They don't really pay a lot in income tax. So if things more or less stay the same, why then are we inaugurating Donald Trump a second time? Whether it's non-consecutively or just on a time delay. Donald Trump's candidacy and presidency have always been about the perception that things will be better for his supporters. This perception is underpinned by an idea that Trump will fight. This phenomenon is always an electoral event. It's what propelled FDR and Reagan into the White House. And President Trump's continued tenure in the White House will be the same. And it'll carry over in some measure to his successor, and it'll affect Republican Party's ability to retain power. Again, there will be some change to immigration policy, but we'll talk more about that on a later podcast. But everything else is gonna go on as it was before. The United States will continue its role as the globe's stabilizing influence, ever more financed by a largely American and European elite with large bond holdings. If you Even if you take out the COVID year, the U.S. economy has actually been higher under the Biden administration than during Trump's first term, significantly so. Why the Harris campaign didn't harp on this, I will never understand. But anyone that dumb doesn't deserve to be the lead a country. Anyway, the economy will keep rocking along for everyone, so that's not really going to be an issue. Where President Trump's supporters may see a greater impact will be in the attempt to round up illegal immigrants. And again, we're going to go into detail on this later into like what it will look like. But you know, that'll be just coverage, and it'll get some hoorah, America's great again, fist pumps. But for average Americans who don't know anyone in the immigrant community, this will be little more than just watching, cell phone capture videos on social media. So is there something about President Trump's second inaugural that truly does make America great again, or will make it great again? Well, in a sense that it's a continuation of the status quo, America will be great again if it can become boring again. One of the most exhausting components of the last 8 years has been the hysteria over Trump, especially from the Democrats. There was a strong sense in which they got a hard spanking last year, deservedly so, just for being jerks. But I don't think they'll stay quiet for that long. But when you're the incumbent office holder or the incumbent political party, what you want is boring. Boring is the key to maintaining power. Political people can keep things boring if they get out of Americans' way and quietly pursue justice, one relationship, one case at a time. Will Trump's policies make America great again, even if we go with the most vague result? Well, I mean, in the sense that some people think they do and others complain about it, yes. That freedom to have that split is what truly makes America great. So, that is my opinion of the upcoming term. Continue to tune in and listen to us next time when we will begin to discuss some of these political policies in detail. We'll understand where they come from, starting with immigration, because that's the biggie. Until next time, keep it free.
Are you ready to become a change agent in your community? Are you tired of the same old people running your local government? Well, your country needs you in office now more than ever. My name is Trey Bahm, and I have a lifetime of experience in politics and government. I have either managed or supported more than 36 campaigns. I want you to get elected in your community, and I can train you with my new innovative online course, Novice to Office. Novice to Office instructs the beginning candidate in everything they need to know to win their election. That's right. I condense the expertise and knowledge used by political professionals and make it available to you. My course will teach you the 3 core concepts of campaigning you can use to be successful at winning your election. If running for office is something you've thought about, but the how-to seems vague or intimidating, Novice to Office takes away the mystery. In my course, you'll learn how to use social media to reach those likely to vote in your election. You'll be provided with a draft budget and learn the basics of fundraising. You'll be able to organize a strong and effective get out the vote effort, and I will take the information you provide and craft a message that can be tailored for any occasion. My course also includes a 30-minute one-on-one consultation about delivering your message, and we'll also discuss what's unique about your campaign. That's 2 hours of professional guidance. Using my approach, 80% of my clients either won their election outright or made the runoff, sometimes having never even set foot in the public square. There's no reason state-of-the-art political consulting should only be available to those who can raise the most money. Novice to Office makes consulting that normally costs thousands of dollars available for less than $500. The course, its templates, all upgrades, and discounts on additional consulting and future modules will be yours for a lifetime. Click the link below or sign up at novicetooffice.com and become a change agent for your family, your neighbors, and your community. That's novicetooffice.com. My name is Trey Bahm, and I wholeheartedly approve this message.